Hey, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us on NTV On The Sport. Today, I'm filling in very large shoes left behind by Patrick Kamara. Only for today, though, and he will be back here next week. But today, we're going to be talking about the economy of Uganda and the stimulus package. Will it come? Will it not come? What's being discussed inside of cabinet? But also, what does Parliament know as regards the economic stimulus package? I will be joined, of course, by Honorable Chris Baryomunsi and CECILIA OGWAL to debate this. Now, for 53 days of a lockdown, Uganda's economy has largely been kept away from its productive capacity. The result has been mass layoffs, restructuring, and in some cases, pay cuts. How is the Ugandan government addressing these issues? The International Monetary Fund on Wednesday announced a 1.9 trillion shillings emergency funding for Uganda to address the impact of COVID-19 on the economy. This money is capped on health, social protection, and macroeconomic stabilization measures. But even before this facility, government had announced a number of mitigation measures, including capitalizations of the Uganda Development Bank, up to 500 billion shillings to be borrowed for small-scale entrepreneurs. So, are there any other intervention measures that government will undertake to sustain this economy? And to discuss this, we have Dr. Chris Baryomunsi, the State Minister for Lands, Housing and Urban Development, CECILIA OGWAL, the woman Member of Parliament for Dokolo District, and Abdu Katuntu from Bugweri County. He will be joining us much later because he was held up on his way here. And I wanted to start before I get into this debate. Have you returned the money? I know that CECILIA wants us to pray. We will pray, but have you returned the money? Have you returned the 20 million? Okay, let's allow you to pray.
Yes.
For a minute.
Father God, your word says that we should honor you before we do anything. We want to honor you today, Lord my God, at this studio. We want to thank you, King of Glory, for giving us this opportunity to meet with the people of Uganda and discuss the affairs of this nation, Father. Lord, we have always declared that whatever we do for God and our country. And therefore, we must honor you at every moment when we are transacting any business that affects this government and the people, King of Glory. Lord, we want to bless you and we thank you. And we pray that you bless NTV, you bless the people of Uganda who are going to listen to us, and even those who have not listened, Lord. Father, may you unite us in every way. In Jesus' mighty name, Lord, we pray. Amen.
And I'm saying my amen by asking you, have you returned the 20 million shillings?
I think that is unconditional. Personally, I had a strong conviction right from the moment the supplementary budget was passed, and I objected to not only to the 10 billion for Parliament. It was not a big issue. I objected to so many unnecessary allocation of resources to sectors which I thought was not necessary at the time when we are dealing with COVID pandemic. So my returning the money was automatic. Even if there was no arrangement to return the money, I was not going to use that money. So the money has been returned already to the account of the Parliamentary Commission. But at the same time, I've been able to meet the people of Dokolo. I've explained to them why I did not take the money and why I thought that when a crisis strikes, all of us should pool our resources together and assist in alleviating any pressure. And that's exactly what I've done. So I've raised resources by borrowing from our circles in Parliament, and I was able to contribute 22.5 million to facilitate some activities where the district is finding some problems and challenges. And I was surprised that much as we passed the supplementary budget with a lot of pressure, when I went to the ground at the district level, the money has not reached. So these people are still grappling with life. There's so many issues that they cannot handle, like, for example, the quarantine centers. There were no facilitations at all. So the little resources that we were able to to raise initially was able to buy the mattresses, the blankets, the food, and so on. But there was nothing yet from the center up to last week when I was in Dokolo. So I think that the government should take steps to ensure that we get protection materials for the health workers, even for the police officers who are on duty, because they are dealing with so many people and they are handling so many people. And it is important that we should protect them. But when I went to Dokolo, these people don't have any protection materials at all. All right, I want to ask you, Chris Bariomusi, have we returned the 20 million shillings?
Okay, unlike my senior sister, CECILIA OGWAL, when this supplementary budget was being considered, many of us didn't know that there was 10 billion of parliament. I came to learn of it from the media, especially the social media and the mainstream media, and when it landed on my account. And when the Parliamentary Commission gave us guidelines, I bought relief items in consultation with my leaders in Kanungu. I asked them what they wanted. I used the money. I mobilized additional resources from my friends. I bought relief items worth 30 million Uganda shillings and delivered the items to the district task force of Kanungu. By the time these altercations came between the president and the parliament, I had already spent the money.
But can you assure me that a supplementary budget came to the pigeon box, which you have access to, came to your email, which you have access to as a member of parliament, and you didn't see that there was a 10 billion shillings, which was allocated towards members of parliament, in particular to get 20 million shillings? Is it possible that all those steps of debate were missed and you only saw the money when you hit your account? Absolutely. What else are you missing?
No, let me tell you what happened. This supplementary budget came to parliament. It was considered by the budget committee. And I think the discussions between the budget committee and the parliamentary commission, that's how money was put. When the report was tabled in the parliament, I was in the house. The chairperson of the budget committee presented the main report. Then there was the minority report, which was presented by Honorable Karuhanga. But I think in his presentation, he flouted the rules of procedure and he was stopped midway. Actually, Honorable CECILIA OGWAL protested, but even her, she didn't say that there was money or she was protesting against the money. She just protested broadly. And then there wasn't a debate. Actually, one member moved the motion that we should vote on the report, and there was limited or even no debate. So many of us left parliament without knowing the details of what was that. What I heard was an allocation in the parliamentary commission. But there wasn't a debate to say there is this money which will be given to MPs or this and this and this and this. So it is wrong actually to meet an MP and attack him that you asked for 20 million. Many of these members of parliament learned of this when it was in the media and also when the money just hit their accounts.
I think it is, let me correct. Yes. The minority report is required to be made, and we have done it every year. We have always presented minority report to give parliament a bigger picture of how the budget ought to have been handled. And there is no rule at all that we floated. There was no rule at all. It's only that we felt there is no need for the minority report every year to be read either by Mrs. OGWAL or by Mwanga Kivumbi. So we felt that for this year, there was no harm in having Gerard Karuhanga reading the report. But you realize that he was not even allowed to read the report, and that is really what shocked me. And you are right actually to say that my objection was not necessarily based on either attacking the 10 billion or whatever, because one thing people don't realize is that Parliament is one of the pillars of state, and just as we do locate money for judiciary, we allocate money for the executive to function. Parliament equally must locate money for its own activities. And in this particular case, which I've now just told you, Parliament needed to do a lot of monitoring work. to ensure that the money that we have given to the government is actually reaching the targeted areas. So these are very important issues, but our objection was more general, because the way the chairman of the budget handled the process, the chairman actually floated the rules. And that is what I raised on the floor of Parliament, if you recall.
Yes, yes.
But that problem was just ignored, and that's what hurt me.
But you see,
I will allow you. I will allow you to. I will allow you to make that clarification. No, I will allow you to make that clarification. But I wanted us to just move the debate away from what was happening inside of Parliament. Many Ugandans sitting back in their homes are wondering. Yeah. Parliament itself had been briefed by the finance minister 2 weeks before this supplementary budget came that nearly 700,000 Ugandans would slide into poverty because of the impact of COVID-19. That brief you received as members of Parliament from the Minister of Finance, knowing and having this information, how then did it occur? How did it pass that 10 billion shillings, which would have helped with an economic stimulus package, then wound up in parliamentary personal accounts, and MPs can choose as and when they deliver that money and where they deliver it to in terms of relief food?
Okay, let me start with a clarification. The clarification is that a minority report presupposes that the members who are disagreeing with the majority report have discussed in the committee and have disagreed on points A, B, C, D. And the whole committee is not persuaded by this argument. Then you decide to, you could agree with the other issues, then you depart and agree and disagree on several points. But the way the report was being presented, there was a lot of generalization. Honorable Karuhanga said they had not seen the majority report. And then the question was, if you have not seen the majority report, then how did you disagree with it? That's why a point of procedure was raised and the speaker ruled in favor of the move and it was stopped. So I think there was an issue with the way he presented the minority report. Could have had issues, positive issues, but I think the way he presented it was not persuading and was not in consonance with the rules of procedure. But coming to your issue, first of all, the supplementary budget was not meant to address poverty issues in the country, because simultaneously we're also handling the main budget for the next financial year. And most of the measures, including anti-poverty measures, are contained within the financial year budget, which we also passed. So the supplementary budget was mainly addressing key emergency aspects of the response with respect to COVID-19. It wasn't that it was supposed to mean to address poverty alleviation interventions in the country. That's why several agencies, including judiciary, including parliament, including Ministry of Health, including ICT Ministry, was given resources to address the emergency measures in as far as fighting COVID-19 is concerned. So there was nothing wrong. And in my view, that Parliament also has a role to play in the fight against COVID-19. I think the misconception that came out of this was that people think that the 20 million was being given to members of Parliament to eat, in quote, to use for private or personal gain, which is not correct. It was meant to facilitate members of Parliament to make a contribution in the fight against COVID-19. I can tell you, if you were to audit me, I have spent much more than the 20 million to address all these emergency issues in as far as COVID-19 is concerned. So the money was not meant to be consumed personally by members of Parliament. And that's where you members of the public sometimes misunderstand Parliament. Yes.
And I think also you need, I think the minister ought to have told you that we were very cautious when locating the money. We made sure the RDCs in every district got about 50 to 55 million RDCs per district. Now you can imagine the member of Parliament carries more responsibility when it comes to social demands from the electorates. But the RDCs got the money, the local government got the money, the health department got the money, and I'm sure people would have wondered, why is it that members of parliament were not facilitated to move to their respective constituencies and districts to supervise what is happening. People should have asked that question. But somebody deliberately decided to use the 10 billion in order to stir up wrath of the population against members of parliament. Because, you know, parliament is a punching bag. You remember when the issue of motor for grant came up? People were making a lot of hell about the 103 million, I remember, at that time. And so the president came forward and said, fine, since you are uncomfortable about the 103, and members of parliament are public servants, so let me now give them new vehicles. Now, giving new vehicles means this is now a government vehicle. It must have a government driver. The government must now maintain the vehicle. So to the taxpayer is 3 times more than 103. So automatically it was swallowed like Memvu because it was a softer deal to give a member of parliament a contribution of 103 as a public servant and make sure you take care of all the expenses involved. And so in the same way, maybe what we can say is that the concept was taken in the wrong spirit.
Sorry to cut you there. There's been now new ways that have been devised on how to spend the money. And I want us to just watch a bite from the NRM caucus that met with the president. And that was Margaret Muhanga who spoke to us after that caucus on how that money should be used. And I'm going to ask my producer to play that bite. And then we can watch it and then we can come back and debate this 20 million.
He was actually advised by the readers of his social media pages. Social media in our rural constituencies has only 1% of the people. And so if you go by social media, you will actually miss the point. But the bottom line is that did the members of parliament deserve to have this money to do some private interventions? Yes, they did.
Does the president agree now that they needed that money?
He really knows it. That's why he said we can form a constituency. He had a lot of input in what we had designed for him. He really concedes that yes, the MPs are facing immense.
So they've allowed finally that the MPs should have the money but head district constituency task forces for COVID-19. But for people who look back and say, does this enhance your private gain as members of parliament? Many would ask, you are the incumbents, you're competing against people in those constituencies. That enhances your incumbency in those constituencies. Not only that, Ugandans who are taxpayers, they averagely pay about 270,000 in taxes every month, are wondering, are we going to get a piece of this relief? How is it going to come down to us? And has any of you considered how you're going to head your constituency task force?
To tell you the truth, I have also just heard it from the media. I don't know how they premised that concept or that demand of 50 million per member of parliament. And of course, you cannot ignore the district member of parliament because they have completely different roles from the constituency members of parliament. Now, how do you handle? You have a district task force headed by the RDC taking care of the same kind of challenges that a member of parliament would also be interested in. So there is going to be conflicting roles which may cause more injury than good at a time like this. To me, this is what I would look at. I think we should have taken a more conscious approach. And if we are talking about money, in a conflict environment where we need every penny, every little money we have directed to fixing our already bad condition in the hospitals. Now you are saying, okay, fine, you have got 20 million. Now we will withdraw the 20 million and give you 50. Haven't you made the taxpayers worse off than with the 20 million? Because the 20 million also belongs to the taxpayers. Now you are saying, no, you bring back the 30 million, I mean the 20 million, and I'll give you 50. So for me, I think this is another strategy to lay a trap for members of parliament. And we don't like somebody to use members of parliament for their own agenda. It is high time members of parliament should say enough is enough. We are not all the time to be associated with money, money, money. We are here to serve the people of Uganda in our respective areas. So I would rather that the caucus yes. of the NRM, maybe they want to fix some deals for the members of parliament of the NRM party, but really they should not drag other members of parliament in it. Because for me, I'm not convinced that if the members of the public are hurt about 20 million shillings per member of parliament, how can you tell me that because the president has cut a deal with a few members of parliament who are NRM, therefore now 50 million will not hurt the public? Are you being sincere?
Honorable Cecilia, allow me rephrase the question. You have the role of appropriation as members of parliament.
Correct.
You cannot complain on a TV talk show that the role of appropriation has been surrendered. Someone is using parliament to appropriate monies. You have that role. You have the power to stop appropriation. You have the power over every single shilling of coin from Uganda and where it should go. So the question that the public is asking, how come in this time when we don't have an economic stimulus package, half the populations are seated back home waiting for some magic to happen so that the country can open up and they can go to their jobs and earn their decent wage? Many of them are being laid off, and they're asking, how come in this particular time when everything seems to have ground to a halt, the wheels of parliament in appropriation of money are still going on, and parliament is denying that they are in charge of those wheels?
Well, nobody will dispute the role of parliament. Parliament still has the role of appropriating money to all the different sectors, including that of the executive. But although the demand for the requirement of this money comes from the government, because the government is the one running the services and implementing all these programs in the country. But what is puzzling me with the 50 million is that before the government brings any request to parliament for funding, government must justify that money. It must justify. So how is government going to justify the 50 million? This is what I'm wondering. Because it tells us there is no way the president is going to find money from some secret source and give it to the 450 members of parliament. Where will he get that money from? I know State House has a huge budget, but I don't think it can be swallowed up in that budget. So I'm still baffled as to where the president and the NRM caucus will get that money. I'm still baffled how they can work out that deal without consulting the speaker, who is the head of the institution of parliament. I'm still baffled how this deal can be struck without even consulting the members of parliament, who are supposed to be drivers in that particular project they are trying to design. So I see a lot of flaws in what is coming up from the NRM caucus. But I have to wait until it arrives on our table. We'll discuss it, and definitely some of us will try as much as possible always to look at what is good for the common man.
Okay, I'm going to allow Chris Baryomunsi to make an input in this conversation, but just wait, let's take a short commercial break. We'll return with Chris Baryomunsi and his views on that. Welcome back to On the Spot. And just like Parliament is inundated with supplementary budget requests, I also have inundations here to have a supplementary thought from CECILIA OGWAL in 1 minute, so that we can allow Chris Baryomunsi also to make his...
Well, I just want to conclude by saying that there's no way that Parliament will surrender its role to appropriate. I think that is one of our key roles. It is our role to monitor the programs and the projects that the government have in our respective constituencies, and it is our role to legislate. And there's no way that we are going to appropriate based on somebody's personal demand or some few people's demand. I don't think that is possible. We need to budget on the basis of the needs of the people, and we need to know where these resources are going. And so I would like to say that if the NRM caucus has good intentions, they should come with those intentions to the Commission of Parliament, which is chaired by the Speaker of Parliament. They will look at it and bring it to Parliament for us to discuss. And of course, the executive also must lay before Parliament the appropriate instruments that will back up that expenditure. I think that is how we can scrutinize the spending and make sure that whatever spending we are going to do is going to be in the interest of the people of Uganda. That's what I can say. But I want to sound a warning. What has happened recently tend to show us that the foundation of our 3 pillars of state is shaking. But we must realize, and I've quoted this before in Parliament, that the root of the authority that we hold at the 3 pillars of state is actually from the Bible, from the book of Isaiah, chapter 33, verse 22. It says, I, the Lord, I'm the ruler, I'm the judge, and I'm the one who make the law. So we should know that we are delegated by God to rule on behalf of God, to make law on behalf of God, and to judge on behalf of God. But now that I'm seeing the judiciary, the executive, and the legislature coming into conflict over this matter, it really baffles me. It means we have slipped out. There is something wrong somewhere which we need to sort out. And this is what I've observed as an elder. And I'm requesting the heads of the 3 pillars of state to sit down and fix it, because it's not good for the country at all.
Honorable Christopher Monsi, you have to now return that 20 million to the constituency task force, and they are the ones that have to do the distribution.
I am accountable to the Parliamentary Commission because I received this money as a member of Parliament for Chinchiz East, and that's my position. First of all, the so-called 50 million or 50 billion you are talking about, I want to treat this as a rumor, because officially we have not discussed this in Cabinet. It has not been tabled in the Parliament. I am also just reading it in the media. I first saw it on social media and also the mainstream media, and therefore we officially don't know about it. But assuming that that discussion was on, then it has to be brought to Parliament, and I hope we shall have an opportunity to debate it, because unlike the 20 million which we received without knowledge, that one, if there is a plan to bring the 50 million, then the executive will have to bring it to Parliament, and I hope we shall have opportunity to debate it in the Parliament, so that we look at whether we need this 50 million, and if yes, for what, under what arrangements shall it be used by members of Parliament. So as of now, we're just speculating, because nothing formal has been brought to the floor of Parliament. The second point I just wanted to again raise is that sometimes the public misunderstands Parliament, and Parliament has become a punching bag for everybody. Like, a big section of the public thinks that in the Parliament we sit and the question is put that how much should you be paid? And then you put your hand up and say, pay me 20, pay me 10. That's how many people, including in my constituency, they think that we sit in the Parliament and they ask, Honorable CECILIA, how much should you be paid? Oh, Chris Bariumus. And yet, that's not the way Parliament works. I just want to use a minute to explain that the Constitution created the Parliamentary Commission. The Parliamentary Commission is chaired by the Right Honorable Speaker and the Deputy Speaker. And then you have the Right Honorable Prime Minister as leader of government business in the Parliament, the Minister of Finance, and the leader of opposition in the Parliament, and 4 backbench members of Parliament who are elected by the members of Parliament. I have been a parliamentary commissioner. Honorable CECILIA OGWAL has been a parliamentary commissioner. this is the body which determines the issues of welfare and emoluments for members of parliament. So when you say parliament has sought to increase its allowance and so forth, you accuse the members of parliament as if they sit in the plenary to debate and discuss how much should be paid to them. And yet, the work of welfare and related issues and administration are done by that commission. So similarly, it is the way this 20 million also came. When I say that by the time I left Parliament, when we passed that supplementary budget, honestly, I didn't know there was money meant for...
I find that
payment.
strange
Yes,
because
yes,
even
yes.
us in the media knew what was contained in the supplementary budget, and we knew that there was 10 billion going to the parliamentary commission. We knew that of that 10 billion, the disbursing to 439 MPs,
How did you
20
know?
million.
Maybe you got the whispers from the budget
Not
committee.
whispers, the very
Committee.
supplementary budget that was presented from the Ministry of Finance into your
You
pigeon
must
box.
have attended Parliament when we debated, when the report was presented and there was a constellation. Did you hear a debate of members of Parliament being given money?
But
in the submissions?
that it wasn't debated doesn't mean it wasn't contained in the budget. There are many things, for example, in the budget that you just
I
passed.
think I've corrected you, but maybe you did not follow.
Okay.
No member of parliament was aware of that amendment. That amendment was moved on the floor of parliament. And that's why a person like me stood up and opposed it. Because you cannot bring something for amendment on the floor of parliament. And so I think the minister is right that members of parliament generally were not aware of whatever amendment that was brought in that supplementary, specifically for parliament. Where you saw the 10 billion was in the report of the majority report of the budget committee, but not in the original document which was brought to the budget committee by the Minister of Finance. I don't think so. But at the same time, I think the speaker has been very persuasive. The speaker said, look, let members of parliament stop talking about that money. I, the speaker, am the one who knows about it, and my commissioners. So I think we need to we should stop being diversionary. We should look at bigger things. And that's why, for me, I am more hard seeing that while we are faced with the crisis of COVID, we are instead budgeting more money for security sector. When the security already got a huge budget for its operation, why should security have a bigger budget for COVID fight, bigger than that of the Ministry of Health? That is some of our concern. We are concerned about that. We are concerned about why other areas which are not necessarily directly concerned with COVID fight are getting the money, this COVID money. That's where we are concerned. So, but I think this money was put there as a bet to divert people's mind from the real truth. We have not been told this almost $1 trillion shilling in classified expenditure, where that money is going. And this COVID has almost frozen all the guns. I don't think anybody wants to fight any country now in this COVID situation. So where is the classified expenditure money going? These are questions we should be asking. Where is the money going? And the luxuries which were planned in the budget itself, I don't think we'll have time to look at the budget. The budget has been brought to Parliament, and for the first time, the minority report was appreciated. Everybody supported the minority report across the aisle. But when it comes to incorporating it into the appropriation, it was not done.
Yes.
Tactfully was not done. Now, that now makes me ask a question. The luxuries that are put there, like for example, travels abroad, seminars, workshops, and all this, where is that money going? In the conflict, in the COVID situation right now. These are issues we need to look at. These are issues we need to demand from government that bring back that budget. We want to review it. We want to chop out
You mean
all
for the current financial year?
Yes, the current financial year. And we make it really straight, in a straight jacket, and go for necessities only.
Honorable
Yeah,
Ogwal, I want I want us
the
Chris
corrections
Honorable Chris
shall go less
Bayomusi.
corrupt. I can tell you that the
Honorable
ministry
Chris
where
Bayomusi,
I
I
come
am-
from, we have received the 19% of the budget for this quarter because there are no corrections. So those travels, the money has not even been realized through
Exactly.
URA. So
Exactly.
there is no
So I
misuse
want
of
us to
resources.
move
Yes.
the gear now to the
Yes.
economic stimulus package. In other countries that are affected by COVID-19, like we are, in Kenya, in South Africa, in Zimbabwe, governments have provided very large stimulus packages. They've cut corporate taxation, they've reduced pay as you earn. They have, some governments have actually put money in the accounts of their citizens. And the question that many Ugandans are asking, what does the Ugandan economic stimulus package look like? And I want to start with you, Chris Bayomusi, because you sit in cabinet, and I'm sure that cabinet has had 3 discussions now on the economic stimulus package. So where is the economic stimulus package?
Well, first of all, the English say you cut your coat according to your cloth. And therefore, simply because Kenya has done this, South Africa has done this, doesn't mean we must also do what Kenya has done. Our primary focus as of now has been suppression of infections. That's where the focus of government has been, to ensure that we don't realize a big rise in the infections, which I think to a large extent we are achieving. But that doesn't mean that we are not focusing also on the area of the economy. And the discussion has been on, like we have collectively said, the cabinet has discussed this, and the discussion continues. We are aware of the impact of COVID-19 on the economy, like it is shattering the economies of everywhere. And I'm sure you have heard through the presidential addresses, the president commenting on some of the areas, issues like urging the landlords not to evict the tenants, to be lenient so that the tenants are not evicted in this period. You have heard that there are discussions between the Bank of Uganda and the commercial banks to look at issues of loans, because there are many Ugandans who have secured loans from banks, from financing institutions, and because they are not working, the businesses are frozen, people are unable to pay back, and the discussions are on between the government and the commercial banks for them to relax some of these measures, to reschedule payment of these loans so that the people are cushioned. Also, the thinking of government is that yes, it's a misfortune of COVID-19, but we need to see how to turn this misfortune into opportunities, especially to boost the industrial sector and boost exports, because looking at the post-COVID era, many countries are going to have inward-looking economic and financial policies, where each country will now try to look at itself. Like when you look at the European Union, some of the debates they have had in this COVID, they were saying, oh, these masks should not be exported. Whatever masks are available should be used for European countries. Whatever items are useful for this COVID-19 should remain within. We should not export. So it's a challenge that the governments, including Uganda, must also see how to strengthen the domestic economy so that we can be able to produce most of these items. Already when you see what's going on, many factories have come up to produce sanitizers. Many are now manufacturing these masks, the face masks, and we think we can take advantage of this misfortune of the pandemic to now stimulate the local economy through industries, through factories.
I want to just pick your mind.
Yes.
You say that we cut our clothes according to what we have.
Yes.
So the cloth that we have is that we have a largely informal economy.
Yes.
The 5 million workers, 4 million of those are within the informal economy.
Yes.
There are Juakalis out there who are welders who cannot come to Chiseka market to trade. And every day that they don't come to trade, they don't have something to eat.
Yes.
When you say things like spurring the economy, what do they mean for those Juakali? What are you spurring in his life?
Yes, you have heard, for instance, the propositions from government that we need to put more money in UDB, Uganda Development Bank, so that people who want to invest in the cottage industries, small-scale industries can be able to access cheap financing like for the juakaris or any other manufacturers locally, to boost their kind of investments. That way, if we put more money, then we are going to stimulate production by supporting these small groups, the large and smaller groups which want to invest in some of those areas. So the juakaris and the people of that category should be able to access some of these resources.
I'm still, I don't know if I should press you harder on this.
Please
but
do.
Prior to COVID-19,
Yes.
juakaris were not coming to banks for commercial loans. How are they after COVID-19 going to come to a Uganda Development Bank for commercial loan?
Well, of course, we had programs which had come in before COVID. For instance, you must have known that the government was discussing putting more money in microfinance institutions. For instance, we were starting a new scheme called a MUKUNDA scheme, which you must have had, so that we put more money and then organized groups like juakaris, tailors, carpenters, saloon operators, border can be able to access money cheaply, interest-free, for them to boost their businesses. And in the face of this challenge of COVID, I think we need to put more money in some of those vehicles for organized groups like juakaris and other groups to access money in order to invest into their enterprises.
Honorable CECILIA OGWAL, when you hear what Cabinet has as an economic stimulus program, does it make sense for you?
Well, I've been listening to my brother here articulating the priorities of the government. And it's like either I laugh or I cry. Because...
So which do you choose of those?
It is my choice. But I think I've chosen neither to laugh nor to cry. But to share my thoughts, hoping that some people in government are listening. The thing is, what has happened is like a motor vehicle has been abandoned in winter. Everything has been frozen. The tire needs fixing, the engine needs fixing, everything needs before you turn on the engine. And this is the question you're asking. So what is your priority? I think first of all, we need to ensure that Ugandans must remain alive, because right now the crisis is food, because there are people who live from hands to mouth. They have been put out of job, food. Where do we get that food from? So this is my emergency demand. So don't treat a patient unless you have diagnosed the problem. So the government must come up with a well-diagnosed challenges which we have at the moment. At the moment, we need to resettle the people who are now in complete despair. They have been thrown out of their jobs. And of course, economy is vibrant when the supply is running after demand, demand is running after supply. These are the simple economics that we learned in our early days in school. So that dynamic force of supply demand is no longer there, because I can't have demand when I don't have money in my pocket. And I am an industrialist. I cannot supply anything when there's nobody demanding. So what do I do? And the company has been frozen for the last couple of months. I've not functioned. I've laid off. So we are in a crisis, and the government has to come up with a dramatic shift of its priority.
But CECILIA OGWAL, you also occupy a very important spot as opposition member of parliament. What is the opposition government suggesting to government as an economic stimulus package?
If the government can declare that they have reached a dead
they don't have to reach a dead end.
Yeah, they can reach a dead end, and so because I can have good points, you're not going to keep plucking my brain and using it. Because the other day I was talking
so why are you in parliament then?
I'm in parliament to serve my people. You know, the government, and that's why I'm desperately trying to make this contribution, that the government must have a dramatic shift in its priority. And for me, my priority is so simple. And it has been my cry every year. Every year there is a budget. I have pleaded with government. Why did you sign a commitment which was made by the AU that we must at least allocate 15% of our budget to agriculture? I've been asking them every year. There was no COVID. But now with COVID, it is a golden opportunity that because when you stimulate agricultural production, one, you are going to make sure that there's food security. And I can assure you, while the people in town are starving, you go to the deepest village in Dokolo, they have their cassava, you know, and right now they're digging. They're not sleeping in their houses. They get up with the hoe, they go and dig, you know, which is a commendable thing. So stimulate, try to empower, create capacity for this farmer so that we can make sure there is food security. We can, because that food security alone is also going to improve on our health, you know. Two, is going to be a supply chain for the industry which is talking about. This cottage industry, for what? It must be strategic. So if I can make a farmer produce more maize, so that I know this maize is not going to be thrown on the street the way we did 2 years ago, this maize, we are now going to build consciously. We have to make sure we build silos around the country, so that when we have excess production, the government must take a bold step to buy the excesses, absorb it, process, put in our silo. All
right, thank you so much, CECILIA. We are joined by Julius Mukunda, who is joining us, of course, from his home. You can see him on the TV screen right there. He's one of the lead experts on budgeting processes in Uganda. Julius, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope that you've been following the discussion that we've been having. But I wanted to bring you in first with a question. Do you think that the budget as passed currently can address the level of desperation that the economy is in right now?
Thanks, Raymond, and thanks, honorable members, CECILIA and JULIUS, for the argument on the previous argument. Raymond, just to say is, let it go. When you explain something and we can't understand it, we move on to these bigger things. First of all, I think I agree with JULIUS that the supplementary budget didn't have anything to do with poverty reduction and economic recovery, but also similar with the financial 2020-2021 budget. It doesn't have anything to do with economic recovery because the budget was prepared when COVID had not even started. And I think for me, where I fault Parliament is that they were debating the 2020-2021 budget during the COVID crisis and did not rearrange the budget to focus on dealing with the crisis itself, but also after the crisis itself, Raymond. So in the 2020-2021, we don't have any COVID, and even the Parliamentary Budget Committee report says it, that the current budget that they were debating have any interventions for the post-COVID crisis. That's why we are looking forward for the stimulus, Raymond. Thank you.
That's an important point to make, that you discussed a budget minus considering the biggest disruptor in the economy everywhere in the world now, which is COVID-19. Has Cabinet considered going back to the drawing board on this budget and having a rebudgeting?
Well, he's right that when we started constructing this budget, it was before this COVID-19. And although, of course, there were some changes here and there before it was completed, but probably we didn't fully integrate the likely impact of COVID-19. But also to say COVID-19 is an evolving phenomenon. So up to now, probably we don't even appreciate fully how it will play out. Maybe 6 months from now, or 1 year from now. So it is not tragic, even if the budget has been passed, depending on how the disease evolves, we can always make adjustments to accommodate whatever situation will be occurring. So I don't think everything is in vain. Yes, we passed the budget, but we can always make adjustments depending on what the situation will be.
Are you making those adjustments now? Because first of all,
yes.
IMF, which just gave you money, said that the COVID-19 has brought world economies to the World War II economic depression levels. The World Bank, which you're begging for money almost in $1 trillion, is saying pretty much the same, that look here, 26 trillion of the world economy has been wiped out because of COVID-19. So those are prevailing circumstances. These are not circumstances that will happen 20 years. They're already happening. So is that something that Cabinet is saying, look here,
yes,
let's refactor this?
The discussion is on. You yourself, you already said the Cabinet has had like 3 discussions. So the answer is yes, the discussion is on. We are continuing to study the impact of COVID-19, and definitely, as the disease evolves, of course, the impact on the economy becomes much more clearer, and all this has been integrated in the planning, in the budgeting. So even when we have passed the budget, at the time when we start implementing, definitely we shall have to accommodate the various implications of this COVID-19. So we are alive to the fact that COVID-19 is distorting very many things, and this has to be part of the budgeting process.
Cecilia, Julius raises an important point. Do you have any thoughts about it?
Yeah, well, I think Julius is right in the sense that the process of budgeting started long time ago. But at the same time, we had an opportunity to do a surgery. We should have done it. And as a member of the budget committee, we prepared a very well thought out minority report, which was supported across. The members of the NRM, the members of the opposition, all associated themselves with the views of the minority on the floor of Parliament. Unfortunately, when it came to appropriation, the recommendations which were made by the members of the minority report were not incorporated in the final decision, which should have been part and parcel of the appropriation. This was not done, and that is what actually upset some of us, because in this COVID situation,
that means it was not supported by Parliament.
But they supported it, except that the Ministry of Finance should have said, give me time to go back, readjust and come back. That's what we were expecting. So what we actually saw, which were very obvious, we worked out a scenario. We said, can we deduct 20%?
Yeah, before you go on, I just wanted to ask Julius, are there any tools available currently for that budget to be re-looked at under the Public Finance Act?
Yeah, I think for me the first thing that should have been done is we should have rewrote the budget. The provision is there, is that in times of crisis, you can actually, even the position is very clear. If you have a crisis, the executive is given a mandate to look at a quarter of the year, to work at a budget of a quarter of the year to deal with the crisis. And at the same time is that the Parliament has the powers, to reject the budget and at the same time demand that the budget addresses the needs of the current situation. But my understanding is, Raymond, is that I think there was an agreement between Parliament and government and the executive that they should let this ritual go through, pass the budget as usual, and that government will come back and bring a stimulus package. It is also allowed within our constitution, but also within the Public Finance Management Act. It is allowed. But I think, Raymond, that is not our problem. Our problem is how will the economic stimulus look like? Because it's not a debate whether it should come or not. It must come. And like you said, the situation, the impact of COVID has already sunk into our economy. And what should be there? Our experience previously, if you look at Ntandikwa 1, Ntandikwa 2, all these processes tend to have failed. So what is new? Yes. What is it new that government should bring on board? I think for me those are critical areas, and I would pray that our Parliament this time around forget about us bashing you're a transactional institution. Just for once, just sit down and think through what do you think where government should invest the money. For example, the small and medium enterprises. These are the stimulus. These are the people, the farmers that actually run the economy. So what should we do to them? And I mean people like the saloon people, the border people, the small scale farmers. These are the people actually who actually live on their own and earn a living. How can we bring them on board? Issues to deal with supporting our farmers, storage and marketing. How can we make sure that we have robust programs? Let us forget about giving money free of charge, the guarantees, money free of charge. No, let us put lines of credit to our UDB, to our UEDC, to our microfinance support center, because these are the things that can help us as Ugandans. Because everybody is very welcome and everybody is very willing to provide us money. IMS is bringing us money. World Bank is bringing money. Even the internal development partners here, Raymond, they have sunk in lots and lots of money. So for me, Raymond, I think the biggest challenge we face is how will the economic stimulus look like? That is the big elephant in the room, Raymond. And I wish members of parliament really this time would critically look at them. Thank you.
Chris, I want to come back to you because you're the one in cabinet. You're the one that has access to cabinet. But from what I have heard and what I've been able to see, a cabinet document that I've accessed, you have 5 components in your stimulus package, which if it comes, this is how it will come. One is accelerating import substitution. The second is increasing agricultural production and productivity. You have increasing households' income through MYOGA and SMEs. You have immediate fiscal and monetary interventions. And then you have immediate government interventions. Where in those 5 things that I've listed, where did the debate rest the most? Where should the Ugandan say, this is where my government is going to bail me out from?
Well, first of all, Julius says, I hope Parliament this time around, as if Parliament has not been doing its work. I think Parliament has been debating very robustly the proposals from the executive and even bringing new proposals on the floor. And I think Parliament has been doing its part. Secondly, the budget which we passed, much as it may look routine, but the components which are related to stimulus are actually embedded into this budget. And what the government is doing is to continue to study the implications and ramifications of this COVID-19 and how it is impacting on the economy and see the kind of adjustments which should be made. The major thrust from the side of government is that we should first of all reduce the imports, because there has been a lot of financial hemorrhage in terms of the dollars which we spend to import most of the items. And the question is, can we build our capacity to be able to manufacture most of these items within the country so that we save the dollars which we are spending in China, Dubai, and so forth, importing items which we can produce. Let me take an example. Second-hand clothes. Can't we build our textile industry here in Uganda so that Ugandans are clothed using what is manufactured here locally in Uganda? Those are the areas we are looking at. Can't we support the growing of cotton, and then we support the whole chain and get shirts and get suits so that you and I can put on suits and shirts and ties which are actually made here in Uganda instead of importing things from outside? Can we invest more in agriculture? And I can say we have done fairly well. Right now, we have excess sugar, for instance. We are exporting a lot of sugar. We have excess milk. In Uganda, we can't consume all the milk which we are producing, and many others. Can we build on that and be able to export many more products from this country? And also, to look at the workforce. Yes, there are these challenges of workers being laid off, and maybe creating more unemployment, but we are thinking that we should be now inward looking, support the industrial sector, put up more factories, more industries, attract more investments, both foreign but also internal investors, and then we create more employment, create more jobs. So these are some of the areas we are looking at. And that's why the president has been saying, much as many people sometimes appear very pessimistic, but for him, he belongs the side of the optimists, that we can turn around this misfortune, use it to build our domestic capacity, to be able to have factories coming up, to be able to boost the productive sector, and then we should be able to build our economy.
All right, thank you. I want us to take a very short break, and when we come back, we will talk about salaried earners in Uganda and what the economic stimulus package should look for them. And also, we still have Julius, so I hope that when we return, we will also pick your mind about the IMF loan that the Ugandan government has just contracted. Thank you so much for staying with us on the spot. We are now going to dedicate this time to talk about salaried earners. In Uganda, there are almost 700,000 people who get their money from salaries. And of course, many of them are asking themselves, what does the economic stimulus package look for them? I want to start with you, Julius. If we could pick your mind, for salaried earners who are looking at the government economic stimulus package, what should that look like for them? I think we don't have Julius yet. But
okay. Yes, I can hear you, Raymond.
Yes. We wanted to ask you, for salaried earners, people who earn their money from a salary and they've lost their income because of this crisis. They're not able to come into work. We've seen pay cuts. We've seen companies which are reducing salaries. We've seen companies laying off people, mass layoffs. What should they expect from government as an economic stimulus package?
Now, and I think that's why this stimulus package must be very robust, because it must deal with issues of employment. How can we bring people back to employment? That is very critical. Now, there are proposals out there. One of them is, for example, can people access their NSSF? For me, I'm of the view that as of now, there is so much unknown. How long will this COVID take? What if it goes up to December and we have already withdrawn all our savings? That would be a bit of a challenge. I think what government needs to do at this particular moment is to invest in sectors that can bring employment very quickly. For me, that's my key area, very quickly. If you talk about building factories are not going to appear now. It will take 2-3 years to have a spinning factory to make clothes, for heaven's sake. It will take long. But it is very easy and very quickly to allow farmers, for example, get the right seedlings, have a planting season, and invest in agricultural value chain. That is quick. That brings immediate returns. We can also put in place affordable credit in our commercial banks. So that these people who have lost employment can go to banks and be able to borrow money at a cheap rate and start small businesses, especially in the agriculture sector. That one would definitely bring results very, 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 very quickly. And once that is done, let me tell you, people will not even forget about being salarized, but people will now be earning an income. It's not about even people who are employed, Raymond. It's even these people who are working in saloons, people who are working in garages, people working everywhere. They have lost forget about big companies. They have lost their jobs. So how can we ensure that businesses, small-scale businesses, start working as soon as we reopen the economy? I can understand why government is very hesitant to bring a stimulus package very quickly, simply because there is so much unknown out there. To what extent are we affected, and to what extent can we make our stimulus package wide and also deep? Those are the challenges that we are facing. But there are things already known that people have lost jobs. Without COVID-19, a number of things must be done, including, for example, austerity measures. You can't believe that in this budget, Raymond, you have monies for people to travel abroad. According to what analysts are saying, traveling is going to be extremely very limited But the budgets of this financial and last financial year, travel abroad is almost still at the same level. So you want to say, where should we be investing our resources more than anything else? I think Parliament could scrutinize the budget and ensure that these luxurious expenses are removed. And I think for me, Raymond, that would be very important. Lastly, is we rely more on private, businesses. Why can't government pay the domestic areas so that business can also grow? And for me, I would like to advise Parliament that it is very important to establish an import substitution fund under UDC, because that one definitely will give us an opportunity to promote our bubu. At the same time, especially in the agriculture sector, we shall be dealing with food security, we shall export, but also we shall deal with inflation. Remember, inflation was one of the biggest contributor to our headline. Food prices were the biggest contributor to our headline information. Thank you, Raymond.
Thank you so much, Julius, for speaking to us. And of course, thank you so much for contributing your thoughts. We know that the connection is not the very best, but we also know that you have to sleep. It's getting late into the night. But thank you so much for speaking to us. And I want your thoughts to start with CECILIA, and then we can come back to Chris Baryomunsi. Honorable CECILIA, on Monday, Chris Baryomunsi and his cabinet colleagues will meet. On Wednesday, we hope that they will bring an economic stimulus package to Parliament. When it arrives, if it arrives, what are you prepared as the opposition to make amends on? What are you prepared to demand for?
Well, I think we have sort of given our views already in some of our debates, because when we started feeling the bites of this COVID-19, I think the House was able to put in place a special task force to go around and do a research in the country, one, and then another one to look at the economic situation, what to anticipate, and what the government needs to do. What advice do we give the government? So that debate was on, and I think a motion was even moved on the floor of Parliament, and various recommendations were made to be sent to the cabinet. I'm sure it has been a subject of their debate. But when we look back, what Julius has said is really what I was sharing with you earlier, that the budget committee anticipated that. The budget committee was conscious of the fact that because of the COVID, there is no way we are going to have our members traveling, members of the cabinet traveling, or anything. That one, we wanted the budget to be cut and be put aside in order to create a fund for stimulus, for reinvigorating some of the industries which have been shut because of this COVID and so on. So we thought about all that, and we came up with various options. If we cut just 20%, how much money shall we put aside for this? If we cut 50%, and we're talking of cutting from luxuries, we're not cutting from the basic necessities, we are cutting from luxuries. And we gave the various scenarios, but I was really surprised that Parliament did not give it a second look. But all the same, I think the proposal which the minister is coming up with is something I would wish to associate with, that the government needs to take a second look at this budget which was recently passed and come up with a well-calculated budget or expenditure based on the basic needs of the country at the moment. But looking at the other side, moderator, we need to go back to our original proposal, that when we stimulate agriculture, if we can facilitate agriculture, if we can come up with expansionary policy and reduce the rates of lending and get the farmers involved in growing more than they have been growing, definitely this is going to cut across. As I told you earlier, it would deal with the issue of food security. It will deal with the issue of supply chain into the industrial sector, and it will also deal with export. So these are the areas we need to look at, which are the ones which can quickly stir up the economy. I think that is where we need to focus on. And as I said earlier, we need to to increase the capitalization of Uganda Development Bank. I'm sure even Julius, I think, mentioned it. Uganda Development Bank needs to be ready to give loans to medium-scale industrial enterprises. And then we also need to strengthen Uganda Development Corporation, so that those are the ones that will focus on agro-based industries, which are medium-scale, be able to deal specifically with import substitution. I think that would be able to help us to get back on the road. But for now, for those who have been employed in industries and so on, I think these industries can be restarted. But let me tell you, simple things like restructuring the loans. Right now, you are not going to get an industrialist after the shutdown to come up and he gets a notice from the bank saying that you owe us so much, and you have not been in production. You were getting your supply from Europe or from America, wherever. Now everything, there's no flight, everything is frozen. What do you do? So we need to look at all that. Those that can restart immediately, we could have them started. We could have raw material supply from within Africa. We also need to begin to strengthen our own trade relations within the continent of Africa, and begin to look at the COVID situation as an opportunity to strengthen the trade relation within East Africa and even the neighboring countries, even the East African community. Yeah. You know, so I think those are the opportunities which are now open. We need to exploit them, and I think my dear brother here will be able to share those. Those are simple, those are easy, those are achievable. We don't have to go too far. But let's start with the simplest that we can afford to do. I had told you earlier, and I hope this will you'll not forget, the animal industry needs to be stimulated as well, because the animal industry is one of those where we can easily export and get money. We can also use it even within the country. I'm not only talking about grain production of grains and so on. We should look at agriculture holistically. Okay. I think this is where we're coming from.
Thank you. And to be fair to government, you've applied to the World Bank for a loan to capitalize the Uganda Development Bank. We also know that you will recapitalize UDC and also the oilseed project in northern Uganda, where CECILIA's constituency there falls. But more realistically, there are people who work within Kampala, who work in Wakiso. There are people in their homes in Nigeria, in their homes in Chiwatule, in their homes in Bugolobi, who are asking, I'm not returning to a job. What does government have in its package at the moment for a person like that?
Okay, first of all, I would like to appeal to the employers, for now not to panic. Yes, the disease has been with us now for 4 months, because it was first identified in December, end of December. This is now RMA, and therefore would urge the employers not to panic and start laying off workers massively. They could send them on maybe leave without pay, but not just to expel and terminate their contracts. Because much as we are still studying how the disease evolves, probably could also overcome it, and the effects are not as grave as maybe we are fearing. So we would want to appeal as government that the employers should be compassionate, not to do mass layoffs. But that said, definitely it is a challenge that some people are losing employment, and that has to be accommodated in the packages which we are looking at as the government, as the people of Uganda. Like I said earlier on, the budget is not cast in stone. Probably it was not possible to get all the implications of this COVID-19 and accommodate them in the budgeting process. But the law and the legal regime has sufficient avenues to enable government and parliament to engineer the budget to accommodate some of these implications as we see them. Because the way we look at the pandemic now, probably beginning of the financial year, July, August, the situation might be different. We could have seen different scenarios which will require us to come back and modify the budget which we have passed. So people shouldn't be pessimistic to think that because the budget has been passed, and therefore, if we have put money for travel, therefore we shall force people to travel. For instance, if we are still under lockdown, how will you travel when the airports are closed? And if we have
flights.
No flights. And if there are resources, definitely we have to channel them to other areas which are essential for us to move on. So the budget, yes, we shall continue looking at it and modify it as appropriate, depending on what we will be obtaining then. Our budget, which we passed, has, for instance, a number of funds, some of which have been existing. You know, there are youth livelihood funds, there are funds targeting women, for women to engage in production. There are funds which pass through the microfinance support center, going down to circles, which Ugandans are able to access at low interest rates. We have funds which we're establishing, the Myoga funds, were funds aimed at reaching out to organized people who are in particular trades, say people who operate in saloons. The thinking behind it is that can they organize themselves into an association in a district like Dokoro, and then they can access some of these funds. The border riders, can they form a circle or an association, and then they are able to access government funds. The carpenters, and many of these trades which we have. And therefore, in the face of this COVID, we may need to enhance some of these funds. So people, like what we are referring to, people who have lost jobs, people whose saloons have closed, people who had small businesses, and in the post-COVID era, probably the businesses have collapsed, cannot regenerate. Can they be enabled to access some of these government funds in order to start off and be able to move ahead? So these are the discussions which we are having in the government to see that we enable some of these groups to access funds and be able to.
There's one particular discussion that I wanted to ask you, and as a way for you to conclude.
Yes.
Many of the workers, when they stay at the pay sheet, the amount they pay in pay as you earn is almost 30% of their revenue. Is it possible for government to forego that pay as you earn so that the full paycheck can come?
Well, these are the proposals which we are looking at, and there is nothing impossible. I think we shall have to look at it because the discussion is still on. You also know we are looking at the possibilities of amending the NSSF law to see whether the people saving with NSSF can access part of the funds. All these are proposals which are on the table and they are being debated. So even that one can be looked at and see how we can facilitate salaried Ugandans to get some support through some of those.
Honorable CECILIA, you started us off with a prayer, and I want you to end with a word of hope. Many people who've been watching this program might have already lost hope somewhere along the way. What's the hope for Ugandans that the legislators are doing everything they can?
Well, I think somebody has referred to the president as being optimistic. I think I'm also an optimist. I want to look at the COVID situation as an opportunity for Uganda to be smarter in its preparedness for any disaster that may come. It is an opportunity for us, especially to give more serious focus on our health sector. Definitely, it's very embarrassing that we are all running after COVID, and we are saying, oh, thank God, we have 0 deaths in Uganda, although we have so many people who have tested positive, but 0 deaths. But we are losing so many people in malaria. We are losing so many people in childbirth. In Dokolo, just this COVID, we have lost so many women in this very last few days. So I think these are areas we need to focus on. Let's find out what is it that causes a woman to die in childbirth. That we must stop. We must use this opportunity to fix our gaps. We must use this opportunity, as we have already proposed, that we should make sure, according to government policy, every district must have a district hospital. In northern Uganda, where I come from, that's where we have gaps. First of all, the poverty has hit us more than other parts of the country. We don't have district hospitals. We need to have district hospitals in all the districts. We need to create capacities in referral hospitals so that ICU is in almost all referral hospitals. Even the district hospitals I'm talking about, there should be oxygen. You know, me and Honorable Biaromozi, we share one experience. At one point, I think in 2015, both our mothers were struggling with lungs problem. You know, we were in ICU, and both of them, of course, left us. But it left us stronger, because then we fought very hard to make sure we fixed that department, and even the Cancer Institute. We made sure we fought very hard in the parliament to increase the budgeting and to rehabilitate the area. So we need to make sure that if somebody is sick in Kabale, it doesn't have to come to Mulago just for ICU. And this is an opportunity for us, and also Ugandans have to know, if you have been able to lock down for the last 2 months and you have been patient, I think let us continue to be patient. We are more concerned to have you alive than to have you dead. And I want to thank the people of Dokolo especially. They have been very understanding, they have been very cooperative, and we have a very hard-working team. They were the first in the sub-region to set up a quarantine center, and they manage it with their own resources. So I think we need to appreciate our people. I'm sure there are other districts which are equally doing well. So I want to say that God is raising an alarm bell. God is saying, let us stand up as Ugandans and be united in the time of conflict. And I'm praying, and I'm really praying from the bottom of my heart, that this conflict, which seems to be manifesting, giving impression that the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary are not working in harmony, this must stop. This is the cry of all Ugandans. We must work together for the good of this country, and we pray that our people up there, please look at Parliament with the heart of mercy. Where Parliament has gone wrong, we'll always come to you and explain, but I think it is high time that we should sit down and see how best we can serve our people with the little resources we have. May God bless you all.
Thank you so much, Honorable Cecilia OGWAL. Of course, I look at you, our viewers, like she has asked, with a heart of mercy. Thank you so much for joining us for this very, very elucidating conversation on the economic stimulus program that the government is planning for all Ugandans. I thank so much our team that has put this together, of course, headed by Chris Mel and Teko in technical. Thank you so much to my producer, Herbert Ziwa, who has been insensate in waiting for us to finish this program. And thank you so much to everyone that joined us. I wish you a good evening. Thank you so much for joining us.